Hi everybody! I am going to get started with our knot tying workshop here in a second. If you can hear me and you're on, please say something in the comment section. Hey Katie! If you can hear me, will you comment please? And let me know. We're gonna get started in just a second. I'm gonna let some people get logged on. And I actually have a camera lady here with me today that's gonna take over it. Yay! Hi Leslie, hi Katie, thank you for letting me know. And we are gonna get started in just a minute. And if you see me turning off to the side, it's because I have it up on my computer too. So good morning, good morning. And I'm looking at myself. But soon I will no longer, hey Mary, hi Mariah, and so soon I will just be showing you my hands and some knots, and we're gonna go on and get started with that here in a second. So I'm gonna flip the camera, and hopefully you'll just be watching me do some knot tying. About half of who said they were going to be here on already. So I'm going to go ahead and start. So just for some introductions, I am Sarah Lewis. I am the program manager out of the Bluegrass office in Lexington. I hope that you guys saw Karen yesterday. She was doing a yoga workshop that was super fun. We are trying to provide a good amount of programming to you all. While we're stuck at home, we want to make sure that everybody still feels really connected to their Girl Scout sisterhood. So today I'm going to be teaching some knots, and in that context, I want to make sure you all understand these are not necessarily like safety knots or anything like that. These are ones that I specifically use for a craft called macrame. You will see me tomorrow as well for a cadet public speaking workshop at 3 p.m., as well as Friday morning at 10 a.m. for Brownie Pets. My colleague Noelle Poe, who is the program manager out of the Erlanger Living Valley office, she and I are going to be switching off a lot to do these videos. We want to make sure that you all have some sort of entertainment that's good from Girl Scouting. So with that, I want to also plug our page that we've got going for COVID-19 updates. And if you want to see that, I believe we're going to have one of our staff send that link in the comments. If you go to our gskentucky.org website and go to the Council tab and then look down for COVID-19, you scroll all the way to the bottom, past all the other great updates, you will see a ton of at-home activities. So this Facebook Live video series is something you can check in on. Right now we're doing it daily, but there are also plenty of things you can just do on your own time at home. So with that, I want to get started with showing you all some of our knots, and before I really get into it, I want to make sure everybody has some supplies ready. So I have today some actual macrame cord. I got this from Michael's for I think $6 or $7. I do think they're still doing curbside pickup if you want to get some of this. But I'm actually going to transfer over in a minute to our actual project using just basic yarn. So if you have any yarn, go ahead and grab that. I also grabbed a stick straight out of my backyard. So if you have any sticks laying around outside, go ahead and take a second, grab your yarn, grab a stick, and that's all you're really going to need today. I have a really nice, I have access to a nice little coat rack that I'm going to hang mine on. You can use a doorknob, a tall chair, a hook in your bathroom, whatever you have to actually like hang something. That's something you should be thinking about too. While you're grabbing your stick and your yarn, I'm going to go over some terminology. So you might have heard me say a couple of times the word macrame. Macrame is an art style. It is an art style that involves a lot of knot tying. So macrame is the style of art, and it's something that I honestly just picked up recently. And when I heard we were going to be doing these videos, I thought, that could be something really fun to do. I know that some of you might have learned about knots at camp or just in your own Girl Scout experience. I was only a Girl Scout briefly when I was younger, so I did not know anything about knots until I started learning about macrame. So I wanted to make sure you knew what macrame was a little bit. I also wanted to talk about the different sides of our string that we're going to be kind of referring to throughout the video. Something that I want to be clear about is that you can use whatever hand is your dominant hand throughout these videos. So I might say my running string is in my right hand and my standing string is in my left hand, but you can switch that if that's your preference. Whatever you feel comfortable doing, I'm probably going to do what I just said. So our standing string, standing tall, it's going to stay pretty sturdy and not move for most of our knot tying. Our running string, though, is going to be running all over the place, doing the loops, twisting. So your standing string is going to be the one that is pretty sturdy and standing mostly still. Your running string is the one that's going to be wrapping and twisting. I also wanted to show you, and I'll have my camera lady film our table here for a second. This is another term I just wanted you to learn. This shape here is called a bight, B-I-G-H-T. This U shape is used usually in conjunction with another loop, or you can tie other knots around it. I won't be using this too much today. However, if you do go to that COVID-19 website, we actually do have a lot of knot tying videos linked there from GSUSA. So if you scroll to the very bottom of that page, see the knot tying tab, and you open that up. If you were coming here to learn more about knots for climbing or safety, if that's what you're craving, head to our website because GSUSA has some really awesome videos on the different types of those kinds of knots, and they even in the videos talk about the different advantages and disadvantages of those knots. So the ones we're using today are going to be pretty strictly the ones that I have used for macrame. They do definitely have real-world uses and functionality, but the knots we're going to learn are the lark's head knot, the square knot, and the half hitch, double half hitch. And then we're going to combine those, once we've learned them, into a start of our macrame project. So we're going to get started with our lark's head knot, and I'm going to scoot a little bit closer so you guys can see. If you have your yarn, we're going to take it. We have our one strip of yarn here right now. And I cut mine, a good way to measure it is taking it from the tip of your fingers to the middle of your chest here. It ends up being about 2 feet for me, and I think that's a good working length for your string. And that goes for the strings we're going to use on our project too. Now, for the lark's head knot, we're going to take our string and we're going to meet the ends together, like this, creating a big loop. So, your ends are down here, and you've got your loop here. So what I'm going to do, I have mine pinched together. I'm going to take my left hand and turn the palm face up towards the sky. So I have my loop over here, my hand face up. What I'm going to do is slide my loop to pinch it between my pointer and my middle finger. Hopefully everybody can see this. Okay. So my ends are dangling here. So what I'm going to do, and your hand is going to look a little different than my hand is because I've got it on camera right now, but I'm planning to take these ends and pull it through the back of my loop here. So I'm going to take my ends, hold them together, and pull through the back of my loop. Get a closer shot of that. And we're just going to keep on pulling. I'm going to let my pointer finger here be a nice base for the lark's head knot to stand on. So we have a lark's head knot now, and I'm going to go through all of these multiple times. So I'm going to undo this, start over. We have our string, we fold it in half to create a nice loop up here. We pinched it, turned our hand to the sky like we're holding a platter, slid it through right to our palm, in between our pointer and our middle finger, and then we took these ends, held them together, and stuck them through the back of our loop. And then as we do that, we let the strings pull the loop tight on our finger. So the reason this one is really important is because this is how we are going to attach our strings to our project. So this is really, the lark's head is a knot that is really good to brace our strings to the actual stick. So again, one more time, we took it, folded it in half, had a loop, held our platter between the first and middle finger. Again, you want to kind of keep your ends fairly even here. You can pinch them, pull them through the back, and then let your lark's head knot rest on your finger. So your finger is acting as your stick right now. So that's lark's head. We've done one of the three that I want to get through today. So next up is going to be our square knot, and I'm going to have this one be a little bit closer up to the actual string. So I want to preface this by saying that a good way to remember this one is right over left, left over right, pull it tight. I will explain that fully. So we have our standing string. Mine is in my left hand right now. My running string, which is in my right hand right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cross one over the other. That's our very first step. And then I'm going to go ahead and tuck that string so that I have a little loop. So just now we did the right over left portion. Now, if you remember, if you still have your strings in your hands, you should know that your running string is now over here, but it's still your running string. Your standing string is now over here, but it's still your standing string. So we did right over left. Now we're going to do left over right and tuck it under. And if you do the pull it tight, you now have your square knot. So let me do that one again. I know this is taking it a step further. So we have our string. We're going to do right over left, tuck it under, and then left over right, tuck it under, and pull it tight. A good way to know if you've done this one right, if you pull it tight, it's good and sturdy, but if you push forward, if you take some of your string, you can actually see that the little loops are kind of hugging each other. So you can pull it tight, but then if you push forward, your loops are holding on to one another. So let me go through that one more time. And if the left over right is the part that's confusing you, you can think of it in the standing and running aspect. So if this is our standing string, we're taking our running string over top of our standing string, and then we're taking our running string again, still going over top of our standing string. Okay? So there's your square knot. And we know it's right because our loops are hugging each other. Okay, so we have our lark's head knot with our loop and our platter going from behind and then tightening. And then we have our square knot running over top of standing, running over top of standing for our square knot. Okay? So, for the remainder of our knots, we are actually going to move over to our project. And again, I have this lovely coat rack that we happen to already have in our home. And so I have 4 hooks here, so that's really nice. I also have an enormous stick. I picked a really big stick, maybe too big for this particular project. If you got a stick that was closer to like this size, totally okay, and probably a little bit more of a reasonable size for this project. What I did earlier today was go ahead and make some of our knots so that you could see what they look like. And then we're gonna go through and I'm gonna show you what it looks like when you actively tie a new string to it. So if you look at this one here, this actually started out with square knots. And you can see by looking at this was a lark's head knot, another lark's head knot, another lark's head knot, and then a 4th lark's head knot. And I combined 2 of them, and then I combined all 4 of them down here. So we started with square knots, and then we actually went into these little spirals, which is what I'm going to show you next. That is going to be our half hitch and double half hitch. And these right here are just our double half hitch knots. So there's some examples of what it's going to end up looking like. But if you can look here, these are our pretty little lark's head knots that are going to be our starters for every single one of these strings. So I did want to show you, again, this is my yarn because I figured that's what everybody would have more access to than the macrame string, but I'm going to show you the double half hitch with my white macrame string because I figured it might be a little easier to see. So we have our loop again, and again, we practice on our hands. It's going to look a little different when we actually do it on our stick. So we want to start out with our loop, just like we did in our lark's head hand example. We have our loop, we have our ends dangling. We're going to pinch it together, and we're going to hold it right in front of our stick. Now, this is the equivalent of pinching it between our fingers. The next step then is to make sure our loop and take our ends through the back of it again. So what I've done here is I've wrapped the ends back around the stick, and now the ends are going to take their next step to come through the back of our loop. And then that should look a little familiar as our lark's head knot. Okay, so I'm going to do that one more time. I know the over and unders can get tricky sometimes, so we have our loop. It's just our one singular string that's now giving us these 2 working strings. But we take our loop, hold it in front of the stick, and whatever means you need to take to get those ends through the back of your loop, you can do it however is most comfortable for you, and you can just tighten it on up. Now see, my strings got a little wonky, but you can fix it pretty easily. So the importance of me showing you a couple of these on the stick or pinched in your fingers is because if we made a loop and pulled our strings through a hole here, it just disappears. So I'm sure there's a magic trick somewhere that's based off of that, but we have our lark's head knot. We are bringing our strings through the back of the loop and attaching it to the stick. So this is exactly what I did with these strings over here. These are just plain lark's head knots. The next knot that we learned was the square knot, right? So we have our 2 strings. It's the exact same thing, even though it's on a stick now, you still have your standing string and your running string. So mine is in my left hand, my standing string is in my left hand, my running string is in my right. So I'm doing right over left, pulling it up, and then left over right, pulling it up. And there is our very first square knot hanging from our stick. So hopefully you guys are following along with me. I know you might have needed a minute to cut some yarn, but again, these here were about 2 feet long before I wrapped them around our stick. So it's not hanging very long, so if you have an enormous stick like this, like I do, 2 feet might not be enough yarn. You might want to go closer to like 4 feet because it does shrink up quite a bit when you start putting those knots in there. These were all about the same length, and so I put quite a few knots into this side here, and now it's much, much shorter. So, what I would recommend for your first project is going ahead and cutting about maybe 12 of these pieces of yarn. Again, it's about the length of your fingertip to the middle of your chest here. And that would look, I think, much better on a much smaller stick. So if you have about 12 of those, that should fill it up pretty good. And again, you get 2 working strings out of just 1 piece of yarn, so that's nice. So go ahead, if you haven't already, cut about 12 pieces of yarn. You don't have to measure them completely down to the centimeter, because you can always go back through and just trim your ends up when you're done with your project. So I'm going to go ahead and start showing you all how to do the double, the half hitch and double half hitch. So we're doing our lark's head knot. We've got our loop, pulling the ends through here. And again, this is a stick that came from my backyard. I really think I should have maybe sanded it or something because it's snagging my yarn. Hopefully you guys don't have the same problem. But we have our lark's head here. Now, we know how to do our lark's head. We know how to do our square knot, right over left, left over right. So now for the half hitch. And if any of you did any sort of friendship bracelet type knotting when you were younger, this might seem kind of familiar to you. This is definitely the knot type that I used when I would make string friendship bracelets. So what you're going to do, you're going to have these 2 pieces in your hand. Again, I'm going to keep my standing yarn in this left hand right here. I'm going to take my running yarn, and it's going to be the one that's moving. So I'm pulling the standing yarn kind of taut, and I am going to probably need some assistance from my left thumb here, but the idea is to make the shape of the number 4, the pointy kind with this. So we have our 4 shape here. I'm going to let you guys stare at that for a second. So we had this one, this string here, our standing yarn. I had it in my left hand, and my running yarn in my right. I have it pinched here like this now so I can use my thumb, and it's going to help me make a 4 shape. So once you've got it to here, once you're in your 4 shape, you're going to tuck this little end here, the rest of your non-pinched running yarn. You're going to tuck it around back and pull through. So I'm just showing you the action. It's coming through here, and we're going to pull that up. So that is a half hitch. What we're going to be mostly using is a double half hitch because we're going to keep on going. So I still have my standing yarn here. I'm going to, and it's seeming easier for me if I pinch it up a little bit closer to where the knots are and have more hanging down here. So I'm going to pinch it there. I'm going to make my figure 4. And we're going to take the end here of the running yarn and push it up through here and pull it up. So if you look really, really closely, you can see that when you add them on top of each other, you can look at this one too, it really starts to stack, and it gives you a really cool spiraling effect. That's definitely what I remember seeing my friendship bracelets look like when I would use that knot. So the cool thing about all of these knots is that for macrame, you can use any of them in any way you would like to. The lark's head is mostly going to be to attach your strings to the actual stick, but in terms of your square knots and your half hitch, double half hitch, you can use those however you'd like. So if you look at this one, you can see I started with a lark's head knot here on all 4 of them. So they were dangling just like these. I started out with square knots just between these two strings, and then I made them meet in the middle. And then I switched to the half hitch, double half hitch. If I wanted to, I could go back and start doing square knots again. And that changes your pattern on your macrame. So you can choose to do all square knots, all half hitch, double half hitch, switching in and out however you'd like. So I'm going to show you what that looks like on my white string in case you couldn't see. So this is my standing yarn. Here's my figure 4. Tuck it around, and I've done a half hitch. Do that again, and we're running low on length here. And you've got another, so that's a double half hitch here. So that's sort of what it looks like. Right now it kind of looks like just a bunch of bundles of knots, but I promise when you do them over and over again, you get these consistent patterns. It might not look like much at first, but once you repeat over and over again, that's when it starts to really look like something. So before we move too much forward, I want to talk about how you can move different strings into each other, meld them together. So right now you'll see that on these 4 strings, they have double half hitch knots on the top of them. They each have 2 strings hanging down, and there are 4 of them. Something that I recently learned while I was doing macrame for the first time was that grouping them in 4, or at least even numbers, is really important so that these strings always have a partner. So that if you do something where you're coupling them, you don't end up having this one lone string off to the side that doesn't have anything to tie to. So if you watch here, if I were to continue doing my figure 4s, only this string would have a new knot on it. This particular string now has an extra double half hitch on it. If I wanted to start combining this line of string with this line of string, because right now they're completely separate, what I want to do is leave out these outside strings from each of them and look at both of their inner strings here. So they're separate now. We want to attach them. So we're going to take their 2 neighboring strings and we're going to decide, do I want to do a square knot? Do I want to do a double half hitch? And that's how we're going to attach them. So I think for this one, I'm going to go ahead and show the square knot again. So again, we have our standing string, we have our running string. They just happen to be from different lines. So I'm going to go right over left, pull, and left over right, and pull. So now this one has not only been attached, these 2, see they are now attached to each other, but now I've started a square knot pattern. So if I'm going to be doing square knots, in order to keep the strings semi-equal lengths, I'm going to want to alternate. So I just did the 2 middle strings. Now I'm going to actually go back to a left and right scenario. So I just did the 2 middle ones. Now I'm going to take the 2 leftmost, do my square knot, right over left, left over right. And so now this side has a square knot, and I'm going to mirror that on the right side as well. Right over left, oops, and then left over right. There we go. And so now I have attached these 2 with this center knot, and then I've done a square knot on the sides. Now, you might have guessed, you go back to the middle. Right over left, left over right, pull it tight. And so you see that this looks a lot different than up here, because we started with well, we very much started with our lox head, and then moved to double half hitch and then square knot. So it's going to look different as soon as you change your knot, and you can make that look however you'd like. So now these two are completely attached now. You can always spread out, go separate ways again, or even start connecting over here. For instance, let's say I wanted to connect these with the double half hitch. It's a little bit of a stretch on my stick, but now, and this is something, especially with the double half hitch, you really start getting a rhythm to. As soon as you've got that muscle memory in there, it's good to go. So now I'm making that little spiral with my double half hitch. My standing yarn is staying in place. I'm just using that running yarn to keep spiraling there. So now those are attached. So that is how you attach these different strings. Once you have them on there, that part's ready to go. As soon as you have your strings dangling here, you can do whatever you want with them. So that's kind of the extent of what I wanted to show you guys, because being creative, that's all you guys. You guys can make whatever you'd like using these knots, using these techniques, and hopefully it'll turn out something great. Again, if you don't think this is something you would like to do and you'd rather really maybe grab some paracord or other yarn to just tie new knots and really develop your knot tying skills and learn the different types of knots, what they're good for, please go to our website, check out that COVID-19 page, because those links are there. Every single video is there. I also wanted to say, if you make something amazing, if you completely hate it, that's totally fine. Either way, we would love if you would share this out, your projects, on Instagram, on Facebook. Show us what you made. Tell us whether or not you like these workshops, whether or not you like these videos. Our hashtags are hashtag KY Girl Scouts, hashtag KY Girl Scouts at home, hashtag healthy at home, and hashtag Team Kentucky, I believe, are the Kentucky hashtags right now. We would love it if we could be featured on one of the government pages showing that our girls are working on stuff and staying Girl Scouts, staying healthy at home. So that's all I have for you guys. I hope you tune in if you've got a cadet or older for tomorrow's public speaking workshop, or for Brownie Pets on Friday morning. Each of these events has a banner at the top of it that shows what the schedule is for the week for those Facebook Live videos. Noelle and I are both really excited about it. Our whole program team, our whole staff are really excited about the digital programming we have going on. So we hope you guys will watch.